Okay. I'm here with John Bulmer, who's had a whole life career in photography and the media, and so I'm just going to ask him a couple of questions about this. So you started at Cambridge, studying engineering as a subject, with photography more on the side as a hobby, and I was just wondering, why did you make the change after you left university? Why did you make the change from having photography as a hobby to having it as a career?
Well, I was keen on photography from the days I was a schoolboy, really, and I went to Cambridge partly because my parents felt that I ought to have a proper career. But I loved photography, and I spent most of my time at Cambridge not doing engineering, but doing photography. And indeed, I did sell some stories whilst I was a student to newspapers and magazines. I did a story on the students who climbed the buildings at night.
Oh, right.
They were called the Night Climbers, and we sold it to Life magazine. So that was a big help. And so when I was finally thrown out of Cambridge just a few weeks before my finals, and I managed to get a job on the Daily Express as a news photographer. It was where I wanted to be, and it was a good start. So although I didn't really do a lot of work at engineering, it kind of gave me the contacts, and it was a good start getting into that world.
So would you say that being almost just kicked out of or rejected from Cambridge would just kick-started your career? Do you think that was a good thing in the long run then?
At the time I was thrown out with Cambridge, it was upsetting, but in the long term, it was the best thing that could have happened for my career.
That's good. So obviously you worked for a long time doing photos for magazines, but then later on you made a transition to filming documentaries for channels such as the BBC, the National Geographic and the Discovery Channel. I was just wondering, because you had such a big passion for photography, why did you make the change?
Well, what happened was in the 60s, the Sunday Times, the Observer, the Telegraph all started what they called their colour magazines, and it was a wonderful era for photography. Britain suddenly really became the foremost country in the world for using photography, and it was a great period during the 60s and early 70s. But by the mid-70s, really, the economics had changed, and the colour magazines moved to a more lifestyle approach, where the editorial contents matched the advertising, and they really didn't want to do the kind of stories I'd been doing. I mean, for example, the Sunday Times had a new editor, and he called him into his office, and he said, "What we want is stories on crime, middle class living and fashion." And I knew my days were numbered. It was not for me. And at the same time, I'd become a little bored with going out each day and sort of shooting the same thing that I was shooting the day before. And I felt the nice thing about film was you had a beginning, a middle and an end. You were building something that over a period of time, and also it was a new experience. I was travelling a lot, and a lot of it on my own. And the thing about filmmaking also is it's more of a team effort. You're involved with other people. So it just seemed an interesting transition, and I didn't want to become a corporate photographer like a lot of people did, doing sort of semi-advertising work for travel magazines or for company reports. And when I look back on what my friends did who stayed on with the magazines, I'm convinced I made the right decision. I had a good time and did things I wanted to do.
Okay. So if you enjoyed travelling, filming all these documentaries so much, being part of a team, why was it that later in your career you retired back to Monington and started cataloguing all your photos?
Well, I just physically got a bit too old for it. I mean, I was climbing up mountains in New Guinea and walking over the Himalayas into Tibet and things like that, and I reached the age of about 65, and I got quite seriously ill through some lurgy that I'd caught in New Guinea, and I knew that it was time to move on. I think that at the same time also the commissioning editors in Discovery Channel were changing, and they were looking for something slightly different. They wanted to put young Americans in to live with the tribe, as you might say, and those sorts of things. And I felt that two things happened at the same time. One, I found it physically hard, and the other was that what the channels wanted became different, and I just felt it was time to move on again.
Oh, okay. So my final question is that given that at the moment media studies and photography courses are more widely accepted in things like just schools and evening classes and universities, do you think this is beneficial for young people who want to work in the media?
Well, I think the most important thing is to work and have a career in something that you enjoy doing. I think that I would hate doing something that I found really boring just to make money for my whole life. You only have one life, and if you want to do it, you should just go out and do it. And the more you can learn, the better. So the only advice I can say to give to young people is it may be a tough one, there may be lots of people trying to do it, but somebody's got to get through and somebody's got to get there. So if you're really keen, just go for it.
Okay, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. I think we're